We are now reconvening from closed session. I'd ask our city attorney to report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The City Council is in closed session this evening for public employee discipline, dismissal, and release pursuant to Government Code 54957. And I wish to report that the City Council, by a unanimous vote of all 5 members, accepted the decision of the arbitrator in the matter of the controversy between the Galt Police Officers Association and the City of Galt regarding the dismissal of David Gonzalez.
Thank you. So now we are going to adjourn to a redevelopment agency meeting. Roll call, please.
Board members Powers. Here. Singleton.
Here.
Shelton.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Payne.
Here. Is there any public comment?
I have no speaker sheets for the redevelopment agency at this time.
So now we will go to departmental. City manager.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. My pleasure to present at least a portion of this report, and I'll turn over the remainder to our City Attorney, Steve Rudolph. I wanted to at least introduce this. What we wanted to do is provide a little bit of discussion this evening on the recent trailer bills to the recently approved state budget regarding redevelopment agencies. There are several items on the agenda tonight relating to redevelopment that will have to be continued to a future meeting date because of the uncertainty regarding redevelopment agencies. So we thought before we did that action, we'd at least provide some discussion for the City Council and the community so everybody could have a better understanding of what the state budget did, how it's going to affect the Galt community and other communities across the state, and the importance of redevelopment for the City of Galt. As many people are aware, but some maybe not aware, the city has used redevelopment for a number of years, since 1987, when the city first established its redevelopment agency, to do a lot of improvements, to eliminate blight, to create jobs, and to bring a lot of good things for this community. Past projects include the development of the city's industrial park, all the jobs that were created out there, construction of a new library, a lot of public infrastructure projects, water, sewer lines, storm drainage, facade, more recently, facade improvement programs. You see buildings being restored along Lincoln Way, C Street, 4th Street, Galt Place. It's almost completed. Brewster Bar and Grill, the old historic building that was renovated, and other projects that we have in the works right now, including the development of the railroad property, the park-like amenities, public plaza, parking facilities down there, a number of property acquisitions that we're in the process of negotiating right now that's on the agenda tonight to eliminate some blighted properties down there and to continue the city's current efforts of revitalization of Old Town. This is just to name a few of the important projects that redevelopment money has done over the years in the City of Galt. Redevelopment is a source of funds that comes directly from the community. It's not money the city gets from the state, from the federal government. It's money that is generated locally from property taxes. The way redevelopment works is, in our case in 1987, property tax values were established as a base year. And as those property values increase over the years, the tax increment, often you hear about redevelopment agencies and tax increment, that increment, the difference or the increase, since then, that money goes to the redevelopment agency to be used for job creation, elimination of blight, and so forth. The state has decided they would like to get their hands on that money, and it has basically passed a 2-bill trailer bills that makes it so that redevelopment agencies across the state will be eliminated unless we make payments to the state of a certain amount. And I'll let Steve go into the details as far as what these bills do, the impacts to the city, but we find it very alarming, disturbing, distressing that the state would continue its past practice of taking money from cities, from redevelopment agencies, in light of Proposition 22 that was overwhelmingly approved by the voters a year ago, that prohibited the state from taking money from local governments, and Prop 1A that was passed several years prior that did the same thing. Repeatedly, voters of the state of California have said they want local money to remain local. They don't want the state to take money out of local communities to balance its own budget that it has had a hard time balancing on its own. And so there is going to be likely litigation filed on behalf of cities and counties throughout the state Like I said, I'll let Steve kind of get into that, but I want to at least give a little primer on redevelopment and the good things that it has done and the big plans the city has and will continue to pursue as much as we can to the betterment of the Galt community. Steve?
Good evening again. There were two pieces of legislation that were adopted by the state last week. The first is known as AB X126, the Dissolution Act, and the other one is AB X127, known as the Voluntary Program Act. And both of these pieces of legislation, I think together it's about 75, 80 pages of documents, and very complex, and a lot of very short timelines for agencies to understand what they've been presented with and to make some very, very big decisions in a very short period of time. The first piece of legislation, which is the largest one, it's about 55 pages, is the Dissolution Act. And basically what this piece of legislation does is it immediately, which means when the governor signed it, immediately suspends and prohibits most redevelopment agency activities. It prevents agencies from entering into contracts, from amending contracts, from acquiring property, from essentially taking any activity that would be a new expenditure of money. Additionally, what it does is it prevents agencies from preparing relocation plans and housing plans, two items that we had on our agenda for this evening, to do a relocation plan relating to the acquisition of property. So that item is suspended this evening. Also to adopt a replacement housing plan, and that item as well is going to be suspended. The only activities that at this point in time that the agency is allowed to continue is to make bond payments and to perform existing agreements. So basically, anything that currently exists, keep the ship afloat, so to speak, but not to incur any new debt and not to go into default under any existing agreement. So that's the permitted activity. On October 1st, the redevelopment agency actually is dissolved and ceases to become an agency. Between now and that date, there are certain paperwork functions that the agency needs to do, such as putting together a list of the existing obligations that it currently has and payments that are required to be made within the next 6 months. This act also addresses agreements between the redevelopment agency and the city. And as you know, we have a loan agreement between the redevelopment agency and the city that relates to multiple loans that have been made to the agency over the last 15, 20 years. And we also recently adopted a cooperative agreement between the agency and the city that provide for the city to undertake certain functions on behalf of the agency. And while I think in our situation that both of those agreements remain valid, this act does in fact call into question the legality of both of those agreements and does in fact invalidate most agreements that exist between agencies and cities throughout the state. The other thing that the Act does is it creates a successor agencies and oversight boards to administer the dissolution process. So once we reach October 1st, the city is the successor agency unless we elect not to serve in that capacity. And as a successor agency, the city would have the responsibility to assume all of the assets and the obligations of the agency and to essentially administer the winding up of that agency. I would compare it to a situation where a company goes into receivership and the court appoints somebody to go in and to take charge of a company and to handle selling off all of its assets and closing down shop. So that's basically what a successor agency does. There's also going to be an oversight board which consists of several members, 2 appointed by the County Board of Supervisors, 1 appointed by the mayor, 1 appointed by a county superintendent of education, 1 appointed by the chancellor of the California Community Colleges, 1 from the largest special district within the community, and 1 former RDA employee. And most actions that the successor agency, the city, would take would have to first be approved by this oversight board. The other issue is there's an option for the city to assume the housing functions that the redevelopment agency currently operates, but what the legislation provides is that while the city could assume those functions, it does not come along with the low mod funds that are in the redevelopment agency accounts right now. So it's kind of unclear exactly what funds you'd have to perform those particular housing functions. This act also establishes certain roles for the State Department of Finance, the State Controller's Office, and the County Auditor. And one of those roles is for the county to perform an audit of the agency by March 1st of 2012, to establish a trust fund to hold all money that the redevelopment agency would have otherwise received, and then to dole out the money to the successor agency in order to pay off the debts of the redevelopment agency. So that's an overview of the Dissolution Act. A lot of moving parts, a lot of players. While it shuts down redevelopment agencies, one thing that it seems to me it does is that it performs a lot of additional work for a lot of other governmental agencies, starting with the state and working its way down. The next piece of legislation is called the Alternative Voluntary Redevelopment Program Act. To avoid being dissolved and to lift the suspension of redevelopment activities, the redevelopment agency and the city may elect to continue operating if they agree to make a payment, essentially to the state. And what this act provides is that on or before November 1st of this year, the city would need to adopt an ordinance whereby the city would commit to making certain payments to the state through the county auditor. The estimate of the payment that would be due in fiscal year 2011-2012, so I think this is due in January, would be $1 million. That's the estimate for the city of Galt. The payment in the following fiscal year is estimated at $240,000. If you make the decision to participate in this program and then do not carry through with the making the payments, then the agency automatically goes into the dissolution process, and then there's other penalties that are built into the legislation, such as if there's any debt that is owed by the agency to the city, that when you go into a default mode, all of that debt that's owed to the city is removed. And essentially the state owns the debts that otherwise would have been paid by the redevelopment agency to the city. Once you adopt this this ordinance, if the city were to decide to make this voluntary payment, as soon as the ordinance is in place, the agency can recommence activities and go about its normal business. So both of these pieces of legislation present the city with a lot of key implementation steps within the next few months. In August, the city is going to have to decide whether or not it wishes to serve as a successor agency if we do move ahead with dissolution. Before the end of August, the agency needs to adopt one of these lists of debts that I spoke of. It's called an enforceable obligation payment schedule. If we're going to move ahead with dissolution before the end of September, the agency needs to prepare a preliminary draft of the initial recognized obligation payment schedule. Before October 1st, we need to decide whether we want to serve as the housing entity. Before October 1st, we need to determine whether to participate in the voluntary program. So those are the big steps, all of those under the oversight of the Department of Finance. And any actions that the agency has taken since January 1 and would take from here on after would be subject to review by the state for a period of 2 years. As Jason indicated, the California Redevelopment Agency and or Association and the League have indicated their intent to file litigation to challenge the validity of both of these acts. And I was under the impression until today that it was going to be filed within the next several days, but a fact sheet that was released just this afternoon by the CRA seemed to indicate that the litigation may not be filed for several weeks. There is a conference call later on this week with the CRA and their legal counsel, so I'm hoping we can get further information within the next few days as it relates to the timing of that litigation. The CRA and the League have indicated that once the litigation is filed, that they will petition to have their lawsuit heard by the California Supreme Court in order to try to accelerate the process. And regardless of what court they end up in, they will seek a stay or injunction to prevent these acts from becoming operative. So that's a quick overview of what's facing us, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Questions from the council? Any questions? That was a lot to digest.
It's really a lot.
Yeah,
it really is.
It is.
It's very fluid. It's going to be changing a lot over the next couple of weeks, so we will keep the council and the community informed as much as we can of what we know and when we know it, and try to survive as a redevelopment agency and move our projects forward in the best way that we can.
You've asked for direction. What recommended action are you asking for?
Well, I mean, I put that on there in order to provide the city council with options. I don't think really at this point in time, unless the council wishes to give direction, that we really need any. Within the next several weeks, probably at every meeting now, I would anticipate between now and the end of November, there's going to be decisions that we're going to have to bring forward for the city council. I think that the biggest one we're going to have to make within the next 4 to 6 weeks is whether or not we're going to be able to make the voluntary payment or not. And if we're going to make the payment, then a lot of other decisions go away. If we're not going to make the payment, then we're going to have to turn to certain issues as to such as whether or not we serve as a successor agency, whether or not we assume the functions of the housing agency, things of that nature.
Okay.
What's our timeline on the stay if they do put one in place?
As far as how long the stay would be in place?
No, how long before they put it in place?
Oh, it's really up to the court. What I would anticipate is that when the litigation is filed, that there will be an immediate request for a stay within a 24-hour period of time, that if the court were to grant a stay, that it would only be in place for a short period of time, like a matter of weeks, that there would be a more lengthy hearing on the stay, and then the court would decide at that point whether the stay would be in place for the full term of the litigation. And it's not an all or nothing situation as it relates to the stay. For example, the court could say that it's not going to stay the totality of the litigation, that redevelopment agencies are in fact frozen, but that the timeline, the October 1st date and the November date, are all pushed off. So that would be essentially a partial stay of the litigation or of the legislation. So we're really just going to have to see what court it ends up between, what actually the CRA and the league ask for, and then what we're dealt to play with.
Any other comments or questions? I'd like to make an explanation to the audience. You may have noticed that we didn't follow our regular procedure in opening this meeting. The reason for that is because our whole agenda is going to be affected by the situation with the state budget and the redevelopment agency. We felt like we needed to prepare you. So consider what you just heard preparing you for the rest of the agenda, which is not what we expected it to be. So with that, unless there are any other comments or questions, we are now going to adjourn to our regular City Council meeting. And I would ask for the roll call.
Councilmembers Powers,
Here.
Singleton,
Here.
Shelton,
Here.
Cruz,
Here.
Payne.
Here. We will have, I would invite you to join us in a moment of silent prayer. That will be followed by the flag salute. Councilman Singleton, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
City Clerk, would you please read the video statement?
This meeting of the Galt City Council is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Tonight's meeting can be seen on Channel 14 and will also be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv this Friday and Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Tonight's meeting can also be seen via live video streaming on the city's website at www.ci.galt.ca.us. A DVD copy is also available for checkout from any library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address council should fill out a speaker identification form and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing council and state your name for the record. We also ask that you turn off or silence all your pagers and cell phones.
Thank you. I would ask for agenda approval. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda at this time?
Madam Mayor, in keeping and in compliance with the Redevelopment Dissolution Act that I just discussed, I'd like to recommend that item G2, the relocation plan of Old Town Properties project, be continued to the July 19th meeting, and that under the Redevelopment Agency agenda, that item 4A, Replacement Housing Plan, Old Town Properties Project, and item 5A, Relocation Plan, Old Town Properties Project, also be continued to the July 19th meeting.
Is there any objections to continue these to the July 19th, was it, meeting? Okay, then we will proceed with the presentation.
Police Department Emergency Plan Update.
Good evening.
I'm Greg Galt. I'm Sergeant with the Galt Police Department. This is Deputy Chief John McElhaney with the Consumnes Fire District. About every 2 years, plus or minus, we stand up here and kind of give you a state of where the emergency operations of the city are, what the status is. A couple of terms you need to know right up front is, if you look in front of you, it says EOC and EOP. One is the Emergency Operations Center. That's a physical building, and it's at the police department or here. And the EOP is what is a living, breathing document. That is the city's emergency operation plan. It's about 550 pages, and it changes dramatically every year. So basically, Mayor Payne asked us to come up here and give you a little state of the state for the city on the emergency operations. Chief McElhaney has been a big part of this with the Consumnes Fire District since the merger. And I can tell you that the city is extremely lucky to have him helping us out and guiding us. There is virtually nobody in this area that's better at emergency operations anywhere. The last time I gave this presentation, he paid me, no. The last time I gave this presentation, I stood up here by myself, and it's the first time in 8 years because Chief McElhaney was in Yosemite, fighting forest fires down there. And what's kind of odd is they'd rather have him running the forest fires down there than fighting them. He does a very good job, and we're very fortunate to have him as part of it. So without further ado, a real brief overview. Quick about how we activate the Emergency Operations Center, the location of it, the supplies, the updates, the setup, the operation itself, and what's coming up in the future, the updates itself. The Emergency Operations Center is activated when an event, whether it be regional, small, large, however it is outside the normal realm of how we operate daily, whether it be police or fire. Most incidents are handled on the trunk of a patrol car or at the Department Operations Center, which would be a mobile command post for us. Police and fire will stand in the back of a sports utility vehicle or the back of a patrol car and right on the trunk, and that is basically our mobile command post. 90% of our incidents that are handled, whether they be hazmat or otherwise, including minor floodings, explosions, fires, are handled at the trunk of a car or at the back of a car. When we activate the EOC, it's because we can no longer function in that manner. The Galt Police Department and the Consumnes Fire District are very adapted at taking care of business, one incident, take care of it, and move on to the next one. And most, not like I said, 90% are handled at the back of a command vehicle. The activation of the Emergency Operations Center is done by the Chief of Police, the City Manager. Those are the two that respond to the state, local, regional emergencies. And it can be something as small as and I hate to say small, but say we have 4 or 5 house fires, and it's going to be a prolonged operation. Fire generally runs everything out of their command vehicles. If it's going to be a prolonged cleanup for the city and we're going to get involved with mitigation outside of the fire district, we'd open up the Emergency Operations Center and probably run it out of there. Because disasters, whether big or small, don't last 8 hours and go away. They could last months and months. Look at Arizona right this minute is a perfect example. That's going to be a 1.5 years of cleanup. Their emergency operation centers, statewide and down at the local level, will be open for a year nonstop. There may be 1 or 2 people running them, unlike now where there's literally hundreds involved. But the Emergency Operations Center on a global basis will be open pretty much for them statewide. The Emergency Operations Center can, by city policy, only be activated by the Chief of Police, the City Manager, and the on-duty watch commander, which is generally a sergeant. It can be at the direction of City Council, and the only way we're going to get that direction is if it's during a City Council meeting and you tell us to open the Emergency Operations Center. The discretionary opening of the Emergency Operations Center, which is the physical building, is generally done in answer to a disaster, but we can also open it to assist allied agencies. For instance, fire has a 1-block residential fire where every house in the neighborhood caught on fire, and they need a command post outside of the normal realm of the back of their SUV. We'll open it for them. We'll help staff it for them. We'll do everything we can to help them in their endeavors. It could even be the Sheriff's Department coming down here for some type of disaster preparedness. Flood out in the county that has nothing to do with the city of Galt, but we need to support them. The primary EOC Emergency Operations Center is 455 Industrial. If you've been to the community room, which all of you I know have been, that's the primary. The secondary, which most people don't know, it's right here. It's this room. We've never activated fully, which we're moving towards, you'll see at the end of this. We've never activated this EOC formally and put it through the paces to make sure the phones work and everything else. The Emergency Operations Center, as a city council member, if you showed up during the disaster and tried to get into the Emergency Operations Center, we actually have armed guards that stand at the door. It's not a joke. You're not allowed in there unless you have access or business. And the access is controlled by a key, and the key is controlled by dispatch, which is protected by the police department. And the moral of the story is nobody gets in unless you're part of it. You don't get to just go in and see what's going on unless you're taken in there by someone who is actively participating in it. The keys are on a sign-out basis. They can only be signed out by the on-duty watch commander. That would be the 6 sergeants, or in this case, I didn't put up there, the chief of police. They're the only people that have the key to get the keys to open it up. Sounds kind of tedious, but that's the way it is. The supplies are all stocked, and they're kept in the Emergency Operations Center in locked cabinets. They're restocked, resupplied as needed, and as we find updated supplies that would help us out, the city purchases those. They're also stored on the premises in the facility, up to and including backup battery packs, USBs for the computers at each workstation. Should we have a failure and the generator doesn't come on, they're charged and ready to go all the time. They're plugged in. So each station is actually fully equipped and ready to go. We just roll the equipment out and it's there and it's ready. It's checked pretty much monthly by me. There is one other sergeant that gets involved with it if I'm not available, just to make sure we check off the list that we went and checked the batteries and we checked the supplies to make sure everything was still there and nothing got into it or water damage or anything like that.
You keep a log on that?
Yes, ma'am, we do. And the easiest way to explain it is to sign the key out. You open up those cabinets, you have to write down what you signed the key out for. We're actually activating it, or it's a monthly check. So if you go down the key sign out log, it tells you why they signed the keys out. And the actual key, the chief of police has one locked away in a cabinet, and it is not accessible by anybody but him. And the second one is controlled by the watch commander's office under lock and key also. So each time you take that key, you have to sign it out, and there's a reason, a comment of why you're taking it out. And monthly, if you go down the list, you'll see that it's checked monthly. Along with things that you'd never think of, like radiation detectors that we check monthly. The access keys and instructions are all kept in one place. In the event that I wasn't available or somebody who is not greatly experienced at the EOC, once they check out the key, actually all the instructions on how the setup and the operation itself is kept on the keychain. It even has a map that pictured, says go to this cabinet, open it, and there's a binder that tells you how everything works. Each section, which is operations, logistics, admin, finance, all of them have their own individual supplies, and when the operations center is set up, there's a quick start that tells them what their job is to refresh their memory, and all of them are maintained because certain supplies only apply to certain sections. They're updated as needed, and they're kept completely separate from each one. They're actually in Rubbermaid tubs. It's kind of a very well thought out. By resolution of City Council several years ago, the emergency operation plan for the city has to be updated between February 1st and March 31st. Majority of the changes come from changes in the law. I'll talk about one at the end that affects City Council directly. This year is the first time we did not update the entire emergency operation plan, reprint it. It's 550 plus pages. What we did is we did an attachment because there were telephone numbers and one small change that needed to be made. Instead of reprinting 10 copies of 550 pages and putting out the CDs, what we did is we made an attachment to it, put it in the front, and called it good. We're tired of killing trees when we don't have to. At this time, the emergency operation plan is current. What's coming up in the next 12 months, 12 to 18 actually? What we've done in the past 12 months is we've run several CERT programs. Councilman Shelton is one, Singleton is one of those. That has been through the last couple of years. The Community Emergency Response Team is a cooperative program that is fully funded by Consumers Fire Department. They share grant money with us to put this program on, and to date in the city of Galt alone, we've probably trained close to 200 people. And it's a disaster awareness program, and you can make a little or as much commitment to it as you want. But the basic levels is 7 classes, and it teaches you what to do in the event of a disaster to care for yourself, your family, and your immediate neighbors. Up to several classes down the road, which are level 2, level 3. A level 2 class teaches you how to set up shelters in cooperation with the Red Cross. If we had to open up a disaster shelter, and 3 is first responders, which is very close to being an EMT class. It's all funded. They share that funding that is through UASI, which actually we're not part of. CSD shares that money with us for protecting and educating the citizens of Galt. We've, this year in the last 12 months, 23 of our Galt residents also attended what's called the Level 2 CERT training class, which is a shelter class. It teaches them how to set up and operate a disaster shelter in the event we have to. CSD, do you still stockpile the cots and supplies that we need? They would bring down the equipment, of which the city does maintain a small cache of equipment, but CSD would roll down their big 53-foot van trailer with cots and all kinds of equipment to set it up. But if I have a disaster going on, we don't have the people to involve ourselves with setting it up. We can call in CERT people who are qualified and trained to actually run it under FEMA standards. It's a huge step if we have a disaster and we have to open up a shelter. The last one we opened was in 1993, and it was at the Civic Center, and nobody had ever run one before, and it took us quite a while not only to get it set up, that was pre-CSD and Galt Fire merger. We had no experience, and it was horrible. It was a mess. Danny Van Loan came down and helped us out finally. Councilman Cruz was still here. It was a disaster. Now we can call these people in. They're trained. They've done this. They've been through the drills, and it's a huge help for us. Yes, sir.
And in addition to the 200 or so folks who have been trained in this community, the CERT program is called Elk Grove Galt CERT program. It is coordinated and managed by the Cosumnes Fire Department in cooperation with the Galt Police Department and the City of Elk Grove Police Department. We named it specifically for the communities those people serve because it is a community-based program. We have over 1,000 people trained in the CERT program, the Elk Grove Galt CERT program. Not all of them are what we call affiliated members that can come out in a time of disaster. Many of them have chosen to take the basic training and then just have that insight should there be a problem in their neighborhood or able to deal with themselves, their friends, and their family. We have the ability, though, to reach out not just to the 200 members in Galt, but all of the Elk Grove Galt membership. And so we would not be looking at the 20 or so folks that live here, but a larger group of people that can help serve this community and are dedicated to do that. And then beyond that, much like law enforcement and fire maintain automatic and mutual aid agreements, we have agreements with the other 3 CERT programs in the county, the City of Folsom, the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire Department CERT program, and the City of Sacramento Fire Department CERT program to share resources. And we have collaborated for a number of years on making sure that all of our training standards are the same, and that when we talk about these different levels of people who have different capabilities, that if we reach out to Sac City or to Sac Metro for additional help, that we'll get qualified people to come down here and assist. And we have an electronic system called the California Health Alert Network that we utilize to notify CERT members in the time of need. And we have been deployed down here 2 or 3 times in the last year to assist law enforcement with urban area searches for missing persons. So they do quite a bit of different activities. If you've been to any of your larger community events, you see our CERT folks. They are filling a need in the community at special events, providing first aid services and disaster education on a regular basis. So you will see them out and about in the community here.
Can I ask you a question? I have a concern. The materials that you're talking about, the cots, et cetera, are they in Elk Grove? Do we have them here in Galt? I remember some years ago, due to flooding, we were separated.
Yeah. Well, a few years back, I met with the director of the American Red Cross, and we were talking about the impact of politics on disaster response. And one of the things that came out of that conversation is, in scarce resources in a capital region, which city is going to get those resources first? And I wasn't confident that it would be one of the communities we served. I think that's a sensitive way to say that. So we kind of brokered a deal had a donated semi-tractor trailer, and we were able to put together resources from a variety of organizations to have 600 cots, blankets, and the support equipment on board that trailer to open and operate a shelter in the absence of the American Red Cross or prior to the American Red Cross's arrival. That trailer is at the Grant Line and 99 area and would be moved wherever it's needed for a disaster. That's one resource that would serve, you know, potentially more than just one shelter. I mean, 600-bed shelter is a very large site, and I don't know of any facility here in Galt that we could set up all 600 to give you an idea how much space it takes. But that is available. It's not in this community right here, but is right at the border of our borderline there.
Elk Grove Galt CERT has been called into action here in Galt as recent, not just to help with the Independence Day celebration to provide first aid, but last time was when Chief Bowen was being sworn in. We had a missing at-risk adult that on a weeknight, calling people out at the spur of the moment, we had 30 trained people show up, ready to go to work, in uniform, ready to do whatever we asked them to do, and basically to go out and start searching for a missing at-risk adult. So it's not unheard of to use them. It's a great program. And the reason we bring it up is when we talk about disaster preparedness, we've already learned through a series of disasters in the United States, and we are talking about September 11th, we're talking about Katrina, but what we've learned out of all of those things, we originally thought we needed to support ourselves and take care and teach the community, take care of yourself for 24 hours, then it went to 48 hours, then it went to 72 hours. I can unequivocally tell you, in an event that is catastrophic, they have to be able to take care of themselves for a week. And if they can't do that, as we learned in Katrina, we may not be able to get them help within a week. And you're talking about a lot of citizens. If we train them to be prepared and to make themselves available to the idea that they may have to take care of themselves, then we absolutely save a lot of resources that can be better served for people who cannot care for themselves, the sick and injured, the elderly, that type of thing. So let me get back on track. In the next 18 months, 12 to 18 months, yes,
Oh, I'm sorry, Sergeant, I have a
You're not
question.
back on track yet.
I apologize.
Well, he saw me, he just was trying to hope that I wouldn't speak up. Because there would have been 31 that night, except I was at city council meeting. I just want, did certain, they just acquired a grant and got one or two new trailers, is that correct?
Yeah, okay,
Could we
so a couple
go over
things
that real
on-
quick so that
on
people know that?
CERT funding. The State Homeland Security grant program makes money available to the counties. The county operational area decides, everybody turn off your pagers. The county operational area decides where that money goes. That money is dwindling. We have funding for the CERT program to the end of 2012. We're starting now to look for continued funding sources, working on fundraising. In fact, the chief and I met just today to talk about adding it to the Legacy Foundation as an item that can receive donations through the Community Service District. This last year, because of the lack of funding going forward, we decided that it would be a good time to spend as much of our effort on obtaining equipment. So there are a couple of trailers being built up that help support CERT deployment. One of those trailers will be here in this community. It will be stored at the police station, a nice locked up yard where there's room. But that'll be available for immediate deployment in this community as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, get back on.
Can I get back on?
Yes, you can go now.
In the next 12 to 18 months, the city is going to be required to do a tabletop exercise. Have not gotten to the point of planning the exercise yet, but to stay in compliance with what's called NIMSCAST, we're required to do another tabletop exercise. One of the big things that we're in the process of doing is looking over the training records, which I said I'd talk about down the road. They passed a new requirement for elected officials to take ICS Incident Command 700 for elected officials. It's a 24-hour class that is federally required of all elected officials in any jurisdiction, which means that every one of you is going to be required to do that in the next 12 months. So I'll find out where it's being taught, which will be in Sacramento somewhere. It's at no cost to the city except your time, but it is now required of all elected officials. We've already taught the ICS 100, 200, 300, 400, and the 700, but it was not the 700 for elected officials. It'll be something that'll be outside the norm. It is only directed at how to declare an emergency, that type of thing. And that'll be required of each and every one of you in the next 24 months. If I can figure out how to get the program down here so we can get, because City Council in Elk Grove also needs, several of them need it, is what I hear. We're continuing our CERT, our big push for CERT. City Council several years ago, Chief McElhaney and I stood up here and gave out the idea of CERT, doing the same presentation we're doing tonight, but state of emergency or preparedness for emergencies, and we pushed the CERT program real big, and we're back tonight to talk about that a little bit, which we've already done. But the idea is that with City Council's continuous backing and the city backing the program, we hope to keep it being a real big success. We're rolling out a new program through additional funding to CSD again. It's called the NET, and it is Neighborhood Emergency Training. And what we've done is we have set up about a 2.5, 3-hour class at the most. With breaks, it's 3 hours. It's about 2 hours of teaching. It's not just by PowerPoint, but this is a class that teaches you what you need to know and what you need to do in the first 72 hours. And we've even stretched it out. It's free to the community. We've stretched it out to explain what you need to do in the first 7 days. It's an extremely important class to people who don't have time, or those busy people who commute out of town, that their homes are not ready for a disaster, and if they're home during that disaster, they don't know how to turn off the water, the gas, the electricity. They don't really know how to even be a homeowner for the most part and take care of small problems. What this teaches them to do is shut off the gas, shut off the water. The things you need to keep on tap, the things you need to do and not do. Do not drink the water if you don't know if it's safe. That's why you keep bottled water, and we teach them to, you need to rotate your bottled water stock. Most people don't realize that. If it sits on the shelf for a year, you don't know what's growing in that. And those are some of the things that we teach that are extremely important. The NET program is going to be available, I understood, on the web at your CSD?
On the web? Oh, for registration?
Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Uh-oh.
We didn't rehearse
Sorry.
that. No, actually, the neighborhood emergency training aren't being scheduled yet to the general public, so we're targeting groups. One of our biggest targets for this year, this fall, and this is something for city staff to think about, is all of our own employees. I strongly encourage that this short investment of time be offered to all your departmental employees' families and to your employees. One of the things that was learned during Katrina is that emergency responders and staffers who are at work when something happens, that are held there, have a reluctance to maintain a focus on their job if they're not sure that their family is out of harm's way. And so one of the things we do with this program is by making it short and high impact, and we help to alleviate some of that stress that I feel better that my spouse is home, knows how to deal with things in the first few hours of an event, and I can stay focused on my job here in the local community. NET is going to be scheduled just like CERT later this year, but said right now we're dealing with a lot of requests from groups to go out and deliver that to those special interest groups.
We're actually starting our first one in Galt is Neighborhood Watch. I think it's Neighborhood Watch. The block captains for Neighborhood Watch. It's a group of about 20 to 25. So that'll be our first one. The other things that, and I'm going to blow CSD's horn just a little bit because they've been really good to us. Chief McElhaney has spent a lot of his own time making sure that I know how this stuff works, and that I brought back to the city and had the opportunity to help lead us down where we are today in emergency operations, because we were so far behind 5 years ago that it was almost embarrassing. Now with their help, we're where we should be. We need to continue to move forward every year. With the help of CSD, as part of the CERT program, I'll be eligible to participate along with several of the members of our community in a full-scale training exercise. It's a disaster drill. One of the questions that I got asked last weekend was, why am I going to a tsunami training? Part of it is an earthquake, part of it is a tsunami. If I can run an emergency operations center or participate in incident command in a tsunami, I think I can run just about anything that'll happen in Galt. And at least bring that education back. So with the help of CSD and the CERT program, I'll get to participate at the management level in that, which I think is a real benefit to the city. We're going to activate, the last thing I have is we're going to activate this EOC, the alternate, and yes, and make sure everything works. You'll have plenty of time to come down and take a look, because I think it's important that you see what it looks like. The overall EOC is, it's interesting when it's working, because you look around the room and go, what are all these people doing? And they're all talking, they're all doing something, and you need to know what they're doing. The ICS 700 will kind of give you a little overview of that. And that's the end of what I have tonight. Yeah.
I wanted to say how much I appreciate both of you. And this has been a strange year for weather, in case you hadn't noticed. And I think there's been a lot of disasters that people didn't think would happen. And there's been so much happening this year that I don't want us to get caught unprepared. And I'm encouraged by listening to you. The one thing that I worry about the most is what if that little senior citizen lady lives in a mobile home park, all of a sudden there is a disaster in the area? What number, or what would she do to get help, or to find out what to do next? We have wonderful training programs, but we all know that to get everybody aware of what to do is difficult. So number one, if there was someone out there, say we had a train derailment with hazardous material, who would they call to know how to handle that situation? Would they call city manager? Would they call the dispatcher? Would the dispatcher be able to give that person the information? Would they call the fire department? What would the first step?
I can answer that because we went down this road once before.
Yes, we did.
Chief McLeany and I spent hundreds of man-hours going out to community meetings and educating specifically elderly groups through the Galt Elder...
Your club.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I just remember Debbie Langorio sending us all over the place. And it had to do with the power outage, and we were unaware there was a power outage. And part of the problem is a lot of people had cordless phones that didn't work when the power went out. And so they didn't know how to call anybody for help. And the city and the fire district as a whole didn't know that the power had gone out. And the people who did call us didn't ask the right questions or even tell us their power was out. All they asked is if the power was coming back on soon. We referred them to SMUD. SMUD didn't give them any help. What we did learn out of that event is to educate our dispatchers on our side, because all 911 calls originate and come through, originate in the city, come through Galt Police Department. Even the cell phones now, we're at moving up in the 911 scale of wireless. So our enhanced 911, a lot of them are starting to come to us now. What happens is once that happens, we establish through the city, we set up basically the dispatchers will be brought in numbers, and they'll be referring people to the appropriate agency if they can call us for help. But it's incumbent that they call us for help. If it's going to be, we need to move them out because there's a shelter, it sounds really cold, but we're going to tell them where they need to call to get that assistance. And it's probably going to be a recorded line that says, you need to go there, and if you need assistance getting there, call, and it'll be the South County Transit, or call these people. Or if we need to move an ambulance over there, please call 911. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be a little cold because of the fact that it's automated, but the fact is, at least we're going to be giving them the information that we need to tell them either call this number or call this number, and we can move forward with it. We learned from that last disaster that the city took a real beating, and the fire district did, for something that wasn't our fault.
The other thing I remember from the training that I attended a long while back, was at that training we found out we didn't have good communication with the high school. At that time we only had Galt High School, as to have access to their auditorium or to their facilities. And I thought after that we had gotten together with the high school, and now we have a key to get in, or we've changed that process.
Yes.
Correct?
We
You
have
guys
a universal key.
You guys are laughing.
Get in there.
Yeah, we actually have keys to get into the new Natoli Dome.
Mm-hmm.
We have keys to all kinds of things over at the school now that are 24-hour accessible to us. Fire department has the keys to unlock just about everything in the city.
Okay.
So we know where all those things are now, where before we didn't.
And if I could just, one quick thing on how we contact people. The evolution of communication is changing very fast. And it's a huge gap that's developing in emergency management as people are moving away from landline-based phones to cellular phones. So approximately 40% of U.S. households no longer have a landline telephone. We relied over the years on reverse 911 systems where we could put a geographic area into a computer and it would call folks, provide the recorded message. That system is marginally effective, and we have no way of telling how effective because it will only call landline-based phones. Contra Costa County has experimented with using cellular lists and cellular technology to do the same kind of thing, but they found a couple years back they had a chemical spill and they activated their system and they were telling people who were on vacation in Hawaii, run, 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 bad things are happening. And people didn't know if that was happening in Hawaii or was happening back home. So there's still a lot of work to be done on the notification process. It's imperfect right now, and we have certain members we can get out knocking door to door. We have police cars with public address systems. There's other alternative means, but that is an imperfect system without a lot of good resolution.
Okay. I've kind of dominated this conversation. Are there any other comments or questions from the council members? I'll maybe be quiet for a minute. Okay. Well, I appreciate so much your time that you've given tonight, but the time that we don't see and the effort and the dedication. And I would like to invite everybody here to give these men a hand showing our appreciation. Thank you so much.
I'd just like to close and say it's nice to have such a positive working relationship with the Galt Police Department. I haven't had a chance to meet the new chief. I'm sure we'll enjoy a good working relationship, and it's been a very good cooperative partnership through the years, and it continues today.
Thank you so much.
For the betterment of the community.
Thank you both.
Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Great presentation. Thank you. Now we will go to public comment.
Under Government Code, Section 54954.3, members of the audience may address the council on non-agenda items. Speakers may address council on any agenda item during consideration of the item. Speakers shall also restrict their comments to issues that are within the subject jurisdiction of the City Council and limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Please fill out a speaker sheet located on the tables inside the entrances to the council chambers and forward the completed speaker sheet to the city clerk. My first speaker, Fred Gaethel.
Good evening. Sort of what I have to talk about is somewhat minor, but it's not. You've been pouring millions of dollars into Old Town, and I have to admit, when you started, I thought y'all were nuts. I thought it was beyond help. It's really starting to look nice down there, between Brewster's, the senior project. On the far side of the railroad tracks, at 3rd and A and 3rd and F, trucks are parking. We have an ordinance against it, but nobody's enforcing it. What I think is really sad is that it appears to be Galt residents who are doing it. It's not truckers who are itinerant truckers coming in to drop something at the industrial park. It's people who live in that area and truthfully are just too lazy to go park their trucks where they're supposed to be. I copied the ordinance, and I also found a sign down in Lodi that they have posted anywhere they think trucks might want to wander that they're not supposed to. And while I don't think we have to set up our own radio, they have a radio station. Tune your AM dial. I don't think we need to do that. They do also, I think it's the police department number to call if the trucks have questions as to where to park. So I'd just like to see us start enforcing it. It's illegal what they're doing, but it also detracts having the truck stop look. When you're spending millions on one side, and then you look across, and I counted one weekend, I counted 11 of them between the two lots. It really does look like a truck stop. That's all I got.
Thanks, Fred. Maybe we could refer that to code enforcement or police department.
To work with the railroad.
Oh, I'm sorry. Al Baldwin.
Al Baldwin, and as you know, I'm a concerned citizen of Galt, and I have a few concerns, though, right now, because it's going fairly well. Things seem to be under control. that's good. But I did get a comment or two from some people that when I visited the farmer's market, and it was on the Walnut one, and before it was Lincoln, but this is the most current one, the Walmart, Walmart, Walnut, got Walmart on my mind there, the farmer's market at the big park over there. And I just have a couple of suggestions that were brought up to me, and it sounded pretty good. Could we have the farmer's market, maybe not right away, because you need to do some changes, I'm sure, maybe for next year or whatever, but can we have the farmer's market at the Rite Aid Tractor Supply parking lot along Twin Cities Road? That was one of them that people are saying, why can't we have it there instead of at the park? Because there's more traffic, there's more businesses over there, so it's like a gimme. I says, well, I'll ask the question. And the next one would be to have a farmer's market, maybe in the AutoZone parking lot, or in the back parking lot, the one that's on C Street where AutoZone is, but in the back there's a lot of businesses in there, and they were saying yes, and we'll even stay open for it at night, because they would like to see some traffic and let them know that they're there. If you're wanting to promote a business, the business in Galt, both locations would do that. Others have suggested this, and I think it's an idea to think about. That's part of it right there. I tried to find the times and locations of both farmers markets, and I cannot find them on the city's website. If it's there, I don't know where it's at. I mean, I just wanted to make sure it opened at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know, I looked everywhere. I even Googled it, and I couldn't find it for the Walnut one. So maybe I'm just not smart enough to find it out. But I did see some sandwich signs when I was going to the market on Walnut, so it was nice. But if it's on there, I know the flea market's on there, but it doesn't say farmers market especially. It should be on, I would think, on when you go to that website, it's right there every single time. But I could be wrong. So, anyway,
It's right there.
I would suggest putting the times and locations in the paper, because sometimes people just don't know where it's at, when it's at, or they need to be reminded even every week. And if you're missing some people coming to these markets, that might be part of the reason. They just don't know the times. Even though it's obvious, they don't know the times. They've got to be handheld and taken to it. So just a thought, maybe put it in the paper once a week. I don't know if you have to pay for it, but you know, it might be worth it if it's going to do what you want it to do. I was wondering though, what's the goal of having a farmer's market? I only see 3, maybe 4 of the pop-ups over there with produce in it, and I'm used to seeing, you know, like Elk Grove, Lodi, and some of these others really have 10 or 15 of these, and 3 or 4 just isn't a farmer's market. But I do see a lot of vendors in there, and the vendors outnumber the farmer's market. So just a thought, maybe you can figure out how to make it a real farmer's market instead of just, you know, with someone wanting to exploit their business. It would be nice to have a real nice big parking lot one, and that on C Street might work because more may want to get into it then because of the business. And I have 2 more quickies. It wasn't on the request, but one is, where do you dispose of the fluorescent bulbs that are becoming a law now that you've got to have when you have like 100 or 200 of these fluorescents that have to be disposed of when they burn out? And the ones in the home where you screw them in and they have all the mercury all over the floor when they drop and the dogs walk on them. I don't know where you could dispose of those in town. I don't know if the garbage would pick it up. I guess you could throw it in one of those big bins and break them so it wouldn't hurt anybody, right? But I just don't know. There's no drop off in Galt.
The fluorescent bulbs, we have a household hazardous waste event that we collect those.
Will you take those in?
They do collect those there.
They will at the market.
Yes.
For sure. Okay.
April, April, I think the last
it was a big
one
question that was asked,
yes.
and I thought maybe out in the open that would be good to know.
And then there are other facilities that you can go to in the county year round.
But no, in Galt though.
In Galt, that's the only one in Galt.
You're right. It's once a year.
We do it once a year right now.
So if you have like 200 or 300 or 500 of these fluorescents, you could drop them over there, right?
Yes.
Okay, just getting it clear. And the real quickie, I got 28 seconds.
Probably wouldn't be a household hazard.
Oh, it's just household, it's not warehouses or anything like, oh, wow, they gotta go all the way into Sacramento and pay the gas and then pay the disposal. Wow. I know I'm running quick, but Barbara brought up a question on the emergency, on the mobile home parks, you know, the old lady and elderly lady, I guess you could say.
Sure.
And there's some elderly men in there too. But just a few months back, the parks were all required to put an emergency evacuation plan, and I guess it's a law because they had to do this, and what they were going to do and how they would contact people. And I was asked, well, can you see if what Galt has, what the plan is? And so I did make an inquiry, and I did get to help them a little bit on it. But as they're speaking tonight, they need to get in touch with the fire department, police department at one of these meetings, the managers of each park, and get a plan together to help them develop a plan for them together. Because you got senior complexes and mobile home parks, you got 5 of them, and let me tell you, it's a challenge for these managers to do it. Well, I'm out of here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Thanks, Al.
Heather Ratzinger? I'm sorry if I pronounced that.
Hello, I'm Heather from the Girl Scout Troop 311, and me and 2 other girls from my troop are doing a event called Back to School Look. Basically what it is, we're just gathering clothes from people who have old clothes that they don't want anymore, and we're donating them to kids who are starting school and they don't have the money to buy clothes. And we're teaming up with Project Love, and we'll probably we'll be doing it August 6th at 8 in the morning to 3 p.m. And I'm just asking for, if you have any donations, you can, come by and just drop them off and stuff.
Where again do you want us to drop them?
Well, we're doing it at the Save Mart, probably by Denny's or something.
Okay. And I have the first donation I brought with me because I talked to you, so it's down there. I will give it to you, and I think you need to take a picture for your badge or something. We'll do that. Here's my first donation. Thank you so much.
It's a real important thing.
Good luck. Is that all the speaker sheet? So let's see. I would now entertain a motion regarding the consent calendar.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
But could we have them read first before we?
Do we have what?
Could we
you
have
want
those
read?
read?
That's a good idea. Would you please read it? Thank you.
Sorry, Liz.
That's okay. We have 3 items tonight. The first one is approval of the minutes of the special and regular meetings of June 21st, 2011. The second is approval of the City of Galt warrants. The third is an amendment to the agreement with Van Skoyak Associates for federal lobbyist services.
I think we
And I have a first and second.
And second, is there any discussion on any of those items? If not, I would call for the vote. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Powers? Aye. Councilmember Singleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Cruz?
Aye.
Mayor Payne? Aye.
So it has been passed unanimously. We will go to scheduled matters. The first item, do you want to read that, please?
Carilion Corners Northeast Area Specific Plan Amendment and Rezone Request.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Chris Arias, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. The item you have before you is a Carilion Corners Northeast Area Specific Plan Amendment and Rezone Request. The vacant site located at the southeast corner of Carilion and Twin Cities is currently zoned public quasi-public. When the city updated the general plan, it identified a need for additional land designated for commercial use. So it changed the land use of this parcel from public use to commercial. This general plan action did not change the zoning or the specific plan land use designation. The landowner is now seeking to rezone the land to be consistent with the general plan. In addition to the rezone, the specific plan designation of public use must also be changed to commercial. There are no development plans at this time. It is hoped that the commercial zoning will make the site more attractive for development. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the rezone and specific plan amendment at its meeting on June 9, 2011. At the Planning Commission meeting, it should be noted there were a couple speakers that had concerns about traffic and also access to and from the site, primarily off Lake Park Avenue. Tonight, we're asking the City Council to adopt a resolution adopting the project CEQA exemption and approving the Northeast Area Specific Plan Amendment from public social to commercial, and introduce the ordinance approving the proposed rezone for the project from public, quasi-public to commercial. That concludes our presentation. Staff and the applicant, Mitch Seamont, are available to answer any questions you might have.
Council, questions, comments? Do we need to take these two resolutions, or we're going to adopt a resolution and introduce ordinance?
You can take them together after we conclude the public hearing.
So we are opening the public hearing at this time. I have no one wishing to speak on the subject, so we will close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion.
I motion we accept staff's recommendations on both items.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or questions? If not, I will call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Powers?
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Cruz?
Aye.
Mayor Payne?
Aye. Okay, moving on to the city attorney's office. Let's see, we pulled G1, is that correct?
Two.
Oh.
Two.
Okay, so
the next item, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Galt repealing and replacing Section 15.04.120 of Chapter 15.04 of the Galt Municipal Code regarding appeals of administrative decisions pertaining to the uniform codes and California codes.
Mayor and council members, this item is a follow-up of the work of the ad hoc committee, and during that process it was noticed that this particular committee had not actually met since its establishment in 1998, so the recommendation was to repeal the ordinance that called for the Housing Advisory Committee and provide that as a replacement, that any appeals of administrative decisions of the building official would be handled pursuant to Chapter 21.3 of the Municipal Code, which calls for the matter to go to a hearing officer. Under Chapter 21.03, the decision of the hearing officer could either be final or it could be advisory to the City Council. The ordinance before you this evening provides for the matter to, in fact, be a final decision. If the council so desired, you could modify that to have it be advisory. It was drafted in its present form because in most jurisdictions, the council is not desiring of having disputes on application of the building ordinance to come before the City Council. It's usually a fairly technical issue. In discussing this ordinance with the mayor in advance of the meeting, one of the concerns that the mayor expressed was that if a final decision was made by the hearing officer, that the City Council may not be aware of application of existing policies or existing ordinances that might in fact need to be changed. So one option in it is to either make the hearing officer's decision advisory, or another option would be actually to revise Chapter 2103 at a future meeting to provide that the decision of the hearing officer would be sent to the city council, not for action, but just so that you were aware of final decisions made relating to appeals of the building official. That would in fact be my my recommendation. That way, if a decision was made that you felt was required change of some city ordinance, it would make you aware of it, and you could take that up as a policy matter at a future meeting. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council has.
I have comments on that, but before I do any of the other council members wish to say anything?
Sure.
I would refer to something that happened a few years ago where the code enforcement officer, I believe, or maybe it was the building department, actually made a correct call, but it was on an ordinance that was established back in the days of horse and buggies. And the issue was, in Old Town Galt, these people wanted to put a fence, like you see all over town, a 6-foot fence around their backyard. They had a corner lot. But because of an old ordinance that was still on the books, they were told they couldn't do it. It was appealed to the council and it was changed. But my concern is if we have anything on the books that maybe is out of date or needs to be looked at, that if this appeals person has the final say, we may never know. The citizen may say, well, the final decision was made, I have no appeal, and then that particular out-of-date ordinance will continue to stay on the books, even though it doesn't make any sense. So that was my concern, and I discussed it with the city attorney. I feel like we represent the citizens of this town, and we need to be available to them, and we need to, in some instances, look out for their best interests. So that was my concern. It wasn't that the code enforcement officer made a wrong call. His call was right, but the policy or the ordinance was out of date. So in discussing this with the city attorney, he made the suggestion that he just mentioned. And with that in mind, I would feel comfortable with it. I just wanted to be sure that the citizens have access to the city council to change something that needs to be changed or needs to be considered. Those are my comments. If there are no other comments, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Now, I would ask the city attorney, we talked about adding, or we're going to bring that back to have it brought to the council, the decision brought to the council. Will that be a separate?
That's correct. I mean, unless there's objection from the council, I will just take that as direction that I would bring back a revision to Chapter 2103 at a future meeting to provide that in those situations where a hearing officer makes a final decision, that a copy of that decision would be presented to the city council so that you are aware of decisions being made.
Okay. So tonight we're only considering the ordinance as it is stated. We'll look at the other idea in the future.
Okay, so that,
I have kind of a question. If it has to do with building, why wouldn't it go to the planning commission?
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Mayor, point of order, we have a motion.
Oh, who made the motion?
You got a motion?
Okay.
So we're in discussion,
then I thought that she had,
unless I'm wrong.
I had a
So we have to complete the
clarification on what
motion.
motion was.
Is there, so we ought to just ask for a second and then go into discussion.
Either that or you pull your motions while we're still discussing.
no, we have a motion, so.
Well, it wasn't a second, so you want to pull it and so we can discuss a little more?
So let's pull the motion so we can talk about it.
Okay, that's
Okay,
why I was
I got
giving
a
you the
question
option.
here.
Okay.
How come it wouldn't, why the city council was building, why wouldn't it go to the planning commission? And Isn't that kind of what the planning commission is, sort of a board of appeals for building?
Well, actually, the planning commission serves as an appeal board for zoning matters, but as it relates to applications of the uniform building codes, that's not something that they would typically deal with. As I indicated, in the last decade, there hasn't been an appeal. If there was an appeal of a building official's decision, we would look for a hearing officer that had some familiarity with the California building codes, so that they weren't coming to this issue with no information.
I think there was an appeal on the planning commission that had to do with setbacks on a fence over in Field Town.
Well, setbacks is a zoning code issue as opposed to a building code issue. So a building code issue would be if the building official is doing an inspection of a new home construction and has an issue relating to the installation of the HVAC system and whether or not it's done pursuant to electrical code, and disputes an order given by the building official to change the installation of the HVAC, that would be an example of an appeal of a building code issue.
Okay.
So this hearing person, or the, what do you call it, the advisor, the one that would make the decision?
Yeah, so it'd be the hearing officer.
Officer.
Mm-hmm.
Once he makes the decision, then they can appeal to the city council, am I correct?
No.
Or no?
The way this ordinance is currently drafted, and as it appears under Chapter 2103, there's two options. It can be a final decision of the hearing officer, and that ends the process. There's no further administrative process. The other is that the hearing officer can make a recommendation to the city council, and then that recommendation would come to the city council for a final decision. So that's under Chapter 2103. Those are the two options that are available. The ordinance that's before you tonight is written to provide that the decision would be final. If the city council wanted the decision to come to you for a final action, then I would have to amend the ordinance to make the hearing officer's decision advisory.
I'm going for the advisory.
I actually am too, to tell you the truth. Because I don't want certain people, see, your example of this fencing, going to this advisor, and I'm not trying to say there's anything bad about it, but the person didn't like this guy coming to them, or for whatever reason it might be. I think that's just too much for one person to have that kind of power in that kind of situation, and I think it ought to come to a group council, the people who represent the city and folks who live in the city. I think it would be a better way to go about it. That would be.
Any other comments?
I was going to give an example. If it's a fire code, the prevention officer, fire marshal, then it goes to the chief. If it's still not overturned, then it goes to the elected board. If that board of elected officials, like the fire board, still doesn't overturn what the fire marshal wrote or the prevention officer, then that individual, and which would be us, would have the right to go to the State Board of Fire Services, which is overseen by the state fire marshal. Okay, I mean, it's a pecking order. And that's exactly something that maybe I should have said that earlier. It would have made sense.
Yeah.
No, because you do have the right to appeal.
Yeah, I want to make sure that option stays available to our citizens, yeah. I mean, it sounds like a lot of hoops, but for their protection and their rights, I think that would be a good deal to have.
Okay, if that's the consensus of the council, then I'd request an opportunity to revise the ordinance and bring it back to reflect that direction at a future meeting.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We have your direction, ma'am. Thank you so much.
But thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification, by the way, also.
Now we are going to go to item 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we are?
Would you read that, please?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Galt adding Chapter 2.80 of the Galt Municipal Code regarding the Relocation Appeals Board.
Okay, Council, the ordinance presented to you this evening would provide for the formation of a relocation appeals board. And I'm going to be optimistic that we're going to have the opportunity in the near future to move ahead with the acquisition of properties in the Old Town, and that along with that property acquisition, it would result in the displacement of certain individuals. Those individuals are entitled to certain relocation benefits. In some situations, there might be individuals that feel that what they are being offered as relocation benefits, moving expenses, and the like, are not getting what they are entitled to. What state law provides is that we are obligated to form a relocation appeals board. The mayor would make the appointments subject to city council approval of those appointments, and that body would be tasked to hear any appeals of relocation benefits offered. So the ordinance presented this evening would be to form that board. Tonight's action would be to introduce the ordinance, waive reading, and continue to the next regular meeting of the City Council. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Not this time.
Okay. So the recommended action, is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
I move to introduce the ordinance.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And just to clarify, that also would include to waive the full reading of the ordinance and continue it to the next regular meeting.
Okay.
The recommendation. Is that
Yes.
okay? We have a first and a second. Is there any other discussion on that item? If not, I'll call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Powers?
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Cruz?
Aye.
Mayor Payne?
Aye. Thank you. Passed unanimously. And now we will go to the Public Works Department.
Okay, next is Pavement Management System.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. It's our pleasure to present a report on the city's first comprehensive pavement management system report. This document, we're going to walk you through tonight with the PowerPoint presentation, will serve as a roadmap and a guide for the expenditure of most of our transportation dollars into the future. With me tonight is Paul Tour, Deputy Director of the Public Works Department, and Joe Ryrie with Pavement Engineering Incorporated. He's the project manager for the company that we awarded the contract to present the study. I'm turning over to him, go through a presentation about pavements, life cycles, how we best spend our money, then we'll open up to some questions.
Hello, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Joe Ryrie, and I'm excited to be here with you talking about something that I kind of have a little bit of a passion for, and that's pavements. Pavement Engineering is a civil engineering company that specializes in pavement maintenance and rehabilitation, and we do this throughout California. Some of the services that we provide are pavement evaluations, pavement design, contract administration, and inspection and testing. And we service both public and private clients throughout the whole state. And we were pleased to be able to provide our services to the city of Galt. For this particular project, we were put under contract to develop a citywide pavement management system, which included assisting the city with the selection of a pavement management software that would be compatible for what you were trying to accomplish here, to measure and inspect all of the city streets, to provide a GIS linkage of that database so that it could be looked at graphically, as well as provide training to the staff. In addition to that, we also inspected all of the city parking lots and looked at the pavement there and evaluated them, and then also took a look at all of the city sidewalk and curb and gutter and evaluated drainage problems as well as any kind of uplift problems and identified that to the city as well. So what is a pavement management system, or the acronym that we use because we're civil engineers and we like acronyms, as we call it, just PMS. It's a budgeting tool. It's a inventory tool. It provides records of pavement conditions, as well as it helps identify streets for repair, which is really important. When you have a lot of streets and you're trying to identify and pick the right ones, using this tool will help the city staff be able to make those recommendations and evaluate things. And another really important thing about having a pavement management system is that it's required for federal and state funding. So if you're going to go after some of those funding sources, one of the first questions is, do you have a pavement management system, and is it up to date? So now the city is in compliance with that. For this evening, we want to go over and review pavement basics. We want to review the findings of the study. We want to talk about budgeting issues, and as well as objectives that we've identified for the city to keep working on and goals to set. So let's start off. A little refresher course, as we call it, in pavement basics. And so we get to go back to school. When you look at pavements, there's basically really only just a couple of kinds of pavements. One is that pavements are built with an asphalt layer over some kind of an engineered material over some kind of native soil. Or there can also be full depth asphalt, where we just pile a lot of asphalt on top of native subgrade. Or there's rigid pavements, which are concrete pavements, is what we would refer to those as. You don't have any of those here in the city, but we do have a lot of flexible pavements. You talk to the bicycle riders, they don't feel very flexible when you hit them, but on an engineering point of view, they do flex. When you are looking at designing a pavement structure, we want to take a look at what's happening from the top as well as what's happening from underneath. And that determines how thick that pavement structure is going to be. If you've got really poor soil under here and are going to have a lot of weight on top of it, it requires a very thick pavement. Here's another concept that you need to understand, and that is that pavements deteriorate at different times depending on their use. You can get a pavement and it will deteriorate very quickly depending on climate or traffic, or you can have a pavement that will last a long time, and this is an indication of that. These curves are typical for pavement, and as far as this deterioration cycle, pavement can look really good for a long time and then just all of a sudden drop right off, and everyone goes, gee, what happened to our road? It used to look really good, and it can happen very quickly once it reaches the end of its life cycle. So how does a pavement actually deteriorate? Well, there's two ways. First of all is by aging. It's just simply environmental effects. It's the effects of water and of the sun oxidizing the binder that holds all of the rocks together. And so we mix it with oil, and that as that binder begins to age from the oxidation process, it ages, and there's certain types of defects associated with that. The other way is by fatigue, and that's the constant bending of that pavement under loading. To help illustrate the fatigue, we put together this graph, and there's a lot of math that goes behind this, but we put this together just so you can get an idea of what it is. What we did is we took a regular passenger vehicle, and we took it out to the scales, and we measured the axle weights of that vehicle, and then we compared that to the axle weights of typical large vehicles. And so what we came up with is that a typical two-axle truck is equal to 442 passenger vehicles. On the bottom of the scale, if you take a fully loaded five-axle truck that's delivering to, say, CVS, and it's all the way loaded, it's equal to almost 15,000 regular passenger vehicles. So when we design a pavement, we're taking a look at it and we're building in how much loading it's going to have. This is the top part of the load. And we think of it like a bank account. You design it for however many of these kind of loadings it's going to have. And as these vehicles go over the top of the pavement, it's like taking a withdrawal out of that bank account. And once it all gets used up, the pavement begins to fail. We try and design a pavement to last 20 years. But if we switch it around and change its use, say it was just going to be a sleepy residential road, and then we decide to make it a bus route, those buses, every bus that goes by is making large withdrawals, and the pavement deteriorates quicker. So here's some different pictures of different types of distresses that you can tell what's happening with the pavement. The first one is alligator cracking. Alligator cracking is quite simply called that way because it looks like alligator skin. And what that is that's a fatigue loading type of distress, and so that's a lot of flexing and flexing and flexing, and then that pavement begins to break apart. And so when we see alligator cracking, we know that that's a pavement that's reaching the end of its design life. Its bank account is at zero, and it's having a hard time holding it together. The other type of distresses that are common to see are block shrinkage cracking or longitudinal and transverse cracking. This is quite simply the pavement, the binder is beginning to age and it shrinks just a little bit. And as it begins to shrink, those cracks begin to form in the pavement. And so those are an environmental type of an effect. Another common defect is raveling or weathering, which is the washing away of the fines in the pavement structure, the smaller particles. Because when we mix the asphalt together and do a mixed design, we mix it up with all kinds of different sizes of particles, and the top part begins to wear off as the water flows over the top of it. And so depending on these different types of distresses, we can tell what's going on with the pavement. So what we did for the city of Galt, and we're going to talk predominantly about the pavements associated with streets, but that can be applied to the parking lots as well. We went out and we actually measured all of these different types of distresses and quantified them, measured them, and then entered them into the program that was selected, and that produces what's called a pavement condition index, which is quite simply a rating for the pavement or a measurement of the pavement from 0 to 100, 100 being the best. It's brand new. So let me walk you through a couple of examples so that you understand what we're talking about. Here's Civic Drive. The PCI when we rated it was a 100. It's considered a road in excellent condition because its PCI is between 100 and 91. Now here's Crescent Drive. Crescent Drive was rated as an 85. It's still in really good shape, but the defect that's out there is weathering and raveling. The fines are beginning to wash off, and the fact that the road is turning from a blacker color into a gray color is an indication that it's beginning to oxidize. It's turning whiter. Here is Robin Court. You can see that there are some cracks beginning to form across the road, and if you look at it, those cracks are cracking at certain intervals. It's shrinking, and so that one was rated as a 70. It's still considered in good condition, but those cracks are going to be a problem as time goes on because it allows water to get into the structure. Now here's Wren Drive, and you can see there's some blocks in here, and this was block cracking in here, but it's starting to progress into more alligator cracking, and so that's why it gets a lower rating. Here's 6th Street, a section of it, and it was given a 38, and you can see that the alligator cracking is beginning to go across the whole section here. And so you can get an idea of the defects and how it lowers the PCI overall. So the higher the PCI, the better the street. Now this was an interesting slide, and I put it in here on purpose because if you remember back to our fatigue loading with the trucks that are on there, one of the things that the phenomenon that we've seen in the last few years is the idea of truck traffic or garbage trucks going into a neighborhood not once like they were designed to do, but now they're going back and they're picking up the green waste and they're picking up the recycled waste. And if I were to go back on the slides, that's 9,000 vehicles every time one of those garbage trucks drives down the street. And if you look at the cracking that's out here, here's obviously it's pickup day, And you can look and you can see exactly where the road is falling apart or where it's flexing and beginning to break. And so the cracking is quite severe, and so it was a PCI of 28. And then this reminds us why we have roads in the first place. Okay, so pavement preservation. What do we do? How do we hold it together? How do we keep our pavements going, living longer than what they want to live, depending on the conditions that they're under? Well, it's applying the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time. I've put in here into the presentation a couple examples of treatments, typical treatments. The first being crack sealing. Crack sealing is one of the most inexpensive, most cost-effective ways to maintain your pavements. It takes those cracks that open up due to the environmental effects, and it seals those cracks and prevents water from getting down into the structure, causing further damage. I was really excited when we went through and we talked about strategizing some different ideas to find out that the city had just purchased a crack sealing machine and is going to be using it. That's going to help extend the life of your pavements quite a bit. It's a good investment. There's also rejuvenating agents, which are new to the market. They actually squirt out of an oil truck, and they're designed to help pavements that are beginning to oxidize kind of rejuvenate itself. It's like adding moisturizer lotion to the pavement. It only really affects about the top quarter inch, but it does help in the sealing of cracks. There's a slurry seal treatment, which puts on, I think of it like a sunscreen for a pavement. It provides a new wearing surface, and it blocks out the effects of the sun and water. That's a very good treatment, and it's pretty inexpensive. A more aggressive treatment is a chip seal or a cape seal. There's also localized repairs where you go out and perform dig-outs of certain areas where the pavement looks good everywhere else, but there's just failing in certain spots. There's overlays that you finally get to, and we slid in here because one of the things that we did for this assessment is we measured all of the cross slopes on the streets. The staff was interested to know what was happening on the streets, and we noticed that there were some cross slopes that were quite severe, and that's because they've been overlaid a number of different times. And you notice that when you park along the side of the street and you open your door and it bangs into the curb and you can't get out over there. That's because the pavement, through the successive overlays, has built up and built up. If this was the first layer down here, you can see that it gets higher and higher, and you begin to get a profiling or a crown problem out there. When that starts happening, the only option you have is to tear out the street and reprofile it the right way again. So, if pavement preservation is doing the right thing at the right time and understanding that pavement deteriorates in different ways, you take a look at you start off by doing your crack filling in this part, and you can see that each one of these treatments has a different place. If you try and do crack filling when the pavement is down here, you're wasting your money. It's not going to help you. Just the same as if you went through an overlay or reconstruct up in this area, you're wasting your money. The pavement doesn't need that. So, here's some different options and strategies that you can apply when you're managing your pavements. First of all is you treat your best pavements first, which means that you take a look at all your PCIs and you say, which ones are the highest, and I'm only going to spend my money on those. Reality is, that's not a very effective way to do things. Plus, it gets you a lot of trouble because people will come in here and they'll talk to you about how bad their pavement is, and you keep doing all the really good pavements in town. The other is dealing with the worst first. This is kind of the default mode that cities get into as I work with them throughout the state. They wait till all of their pavements get really bad, and then they go out and deal with those. The problem is if you remember the deterioration curve, pavements continue to deteriorate. So if you're always dealing with the worst ones, which cost the most money, and which you can only do a few of, all the rest of the pavements are sliding down the hill at you, almost in an avalanche type of a fashion. The best way to manage your pavements is by employing what I call a critical PCI approach, which is quite simply trying to address the pavements at this point here and at this point here, and at this point here. These different treatments cost different amounts of money as the pavement deteriorate, and that's what these different cent signs and dollar signs are intended to do. So what we want to try and do is we want to catch the pavement and do the treatment right before it drops down into the next most expensive category. So a good pavement management system will actually employ selections of streets from here, selections from streets from here, selections from streets from here, as well as selections of streets from here. And by doing that, you're going to get the best life out of your pavement, and your system is going to be healthier over the longer period of time. Now, this is a busy slide, but it has a really great story that I want to show you. We took a street and we applied more of a pavement preservation, doing the right thing at the right time. And so at the right time we did a slurry seal, and it pushed out, it extended the life a little bit, and then we did another one, and we did another one, and then we did a cape seal, and finally it got to a point where it needed to be overlaid, and then we repeated that process. This street down here, or this pavement, we just let deteriorate. It was built and we just let it go until it needed an overlay. And then we did an overlay treatment, and it extended its life out. By following this out, bottom line is doing pavement preservation will save you almost half as much per square foot for the cost of your street. So if you're looking to also be cost effective, taking care of your streets with doing maintenance at the right time is also going to help you. Now, what did we find out in Galt, specific to Galt? You have 89 center line miles that the city is in charge of maintaining. Overall, you have a 76 PCI, that's your pavement condition. That's an average of everything in the street. Some are good, some are not good, that good, but the average is 76. If you were to replace everything in the city right now, just the street, not including the curb, gutter, or sidewalk, just the asphalt, it would cost you $180 million. That's its replacement value. That's what kind of asset you're talking about trying to maintain with your street system. It's really an important thing. This slide is very telling because you've got a lot of streets that were built in neighborhoods several years ago, on the tune of 10 to 15 years ago, that the pavements are still looking in really good shape. But remember the curve. It looks good for a while and then begins to drop off. Notice where most of your streets are, right here between 70 and 90. That's telling you that your system is more in a maintenance type of a system. You do have some streets that are bad that need to be dealt with, but predominantly most of your money should be spent on maintenance treatments. That's the crack sealing, that's the slurry seals, that's a cape seal. Those kind of things are where you want to spend your money. The other thing that you need to watch out for is if you don't take care of these, where are they going to end up? They're going to keep sliding down the curve down here and become more and more expensive to maintain. So when you talk about a 76 PCI, it's interesting to break it down and take a look at that, how it turns that into functional classifications. In other words, where are your major streets or your arterials? Where are your collectors and where are your residentials? So we took a look at it, and your arterials are 75, your collectors are a 72, but your residentials are an 80. That's saying that most of the time it's a situation where most cities will have their residential streets not be in as good a condition because they're trying to maintain their major routes. It was interesting, they talked about Katrina here with the problems that Katrina had. Another thing that they found out about Katrina was once the arterials went down, everything shut down. And so maintaining your arterials in good condition is important for your economy and the health of your city. We took a look at your residentials and broke them down into various zones, and that's included in the report. There were 12 zones that we broke it down into, and it's an interesting way to be able to manage your system that way. Zone 4, which is your downtown, was the lowest one with an overall rating of 65.
Let me jump in and add. You in your agenda packet just have excerpts This is the entire report here. And so rather than provide you with, for instance, a material, we gave you the summaries of it. We put this in the library, people can look at it. We'd be happy to give you a whole copy if you'd like. We'd happy to have you read it.
I think it's great reading. How do you compare to regionally to other cities? Pretty good. You're a 76. Stockton was a 66. Manteca 70. You can see the other numbers in here. You're actually looking very, very good. These are all agencies that use the same program that you do as well. You'll notice that the other city, Lathrop, is high. That's because they've had a lot of development as well, similar to you. Lots of residential neighborhoods have been built recently. So here's what you can anticipate with your system. And one of the good things about the program is that you can put together these type of projections and scenarios. So we just took a look at a few. What kind of money would it take to maintain your system at the 76 that it is now? And this is probably really small. I think it's in your executive summary, but it's going to take $2.9 million per year to maintain your overall system at a 76. What if you let your system deteriorate down to a 71, which is still considered in good condition? You would spend $2.2 million. If you didn't spend any money at all, your system deteriorates over 10 years down to about a 54, 53, or a 54 if you don't pay any attention to it at all or spend any money. Your current budget, which was an average, we took a look at your average budget, and it's about $400,000 per year is what you've been spending as a city. That's the green line. This is what you can anticipate if you keep that spending level all the way through there. You're just barely above the zero line. So what do you do about that? Here's some different objectives for that we're going to be that the staff is going to be working with. You want to be able to keep your pavement management system current. By keeping this program current, you're going to be able to work with the projections, and you're going to be able to follow trends. You're going to be able to see what type of treatments are effective, and it will be able to help in the decision-making process. The staff is going to develop some best management practices and to be able to determine the most effective strategies. You want to be able to balance and maximize the use of any existing funds, and we have an idea for that. And then you want to be able to continue to search for additional funding. For instance, we talked about the garbage trucks. I've seen cities effectively negotiate with their waste management companies and by being able to show the impact that those trucks have on pavement life and be able to work out their negotiations with them to be able to offset some of the cost to the streets or impact to the streets. So what are some of the best management practices? First of all, coming up with and selecting which maintenance treatments we're going to be able to utilize depending on where the pavement condition is. You want to be able to take a look at your priorities. Where are your critical assets? If you want to be able to keep your arterial system in really good shape, that would be considered a critical asset. You've got a lot of commerce from your parking lots with your farmers markets that you have there. That I would consider a critical asset that you want to have. You want to be able to track treatment effectiveness, which is why the program is going to be very helpful to the staff to be able to put in, this is what was done, this is what kind of life it gave, and then by monitoring it over time, how effective it's really being. And then this program allows the staff to be able to refine the program itself to be able to match the conditions of Galt. Galt's different than a coastal city, but the program is set up with its defaults to be able to just look at California in general, but there's lots of different types of conditions throughout California. So over time, the program will match Galt. And then keeping up on new technology. We talked about pavement rejuvenators. There's all kinds of different things that that Caltrans is experimenting with, as well as other agencies are experimenting with to extend their pavement life. We talked about what to do with the minimal funds that we have now. $400,000 is what we have to spend. Here's where the best bang for your buck is going to be. Let's worry about the potholes that are out there. That's the localized dig-outs that need to be done. Patching those areas and keeping the problem areas under control. Employ your crack sealing machine and get those cracks filled so that we keep the water out from underneath the pavement. Get a slurry seal program. Your pavements are perfect for a slurry seal program. Many of your pavements are. And if by doing that, if you remember that really busy slide, you're going to extend the pavement life and your overall cost is going to go down. The other thing is there will be selected paving projects that will need an overlay or some type of a rehabilitation project. And so as those opportunities come up with the funding, you're going to want to do that as well. That's the presentation, and I'll answer any questions.
Questions? Anybody?
No. Pretty clear.
Pretty clear. It was a very good report. Thank you. I even understood most of it. So we're just receiving this report? That's the only action?
Yes, we're asking to just receive the report. This really would be a tool for Public Works to use to help maximize where we spend the money. You can see from the slides, it's a gloom picture of what's ahead. We're in the same boat as the rest of the state. So the real message here is how critical it is that we properly manage the monies we do have and try to protect the asset that we have. And this tool will help us try to hit those points where we maximize what that dollar can do for us.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll be watching your pavement from now on. Thank you so much. If there are no questions, then we'll go to the next item, which is communication. Any written communication anyone would like to share at this time? Then we will now adjourn and go to the redevelopment agency. Again, roll call.
Board members Powers. Here. Singleton.
Here.
Shelton.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Kane.
Do we have any public comment?
I have no speaker sheets.
Then are there any additions or deletions to the consent agenda? No? Nothing from the city attorney?
We have two pulled up that were pulled off earlier.
Okay, so we don't need to pull them off again.
4A and 5A, if I recall.
That's correct.
And those will be continued until July 19th.
Thank you. So then do you want to read the consent items, please?
Yes, we have two items on the consent calendar. The first one, approval of the minutes of the meeting of June 21st, 2011. And the second one, approval of the redevelopment agency warrants.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Powers? Aye. Councilmember Singleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Cruz?
Aye.
Mayor Payne?
Aye. So we are continuing items 4A and 5A. Correct? Yes. Both of those?
Mm-hmm.
So now we will adjourn and reconvene to the regular city council meeting, continuing with the city clerk's report.
Okay, just a quick one tonight. At this time, I'm asking council to appoint a representative and up to 2 alternates to serve as the voting delegates at the League of California Cities annual conference in September. It will be held September 21st to the 23rd in San Francisco this year. And the business meeting will be held Friday, September 23rd at 2:30, which is after the closing of the conference.
So you have to stay a little bit later.
Let's stay a little bit later.
Anyone that would like to volunteer?
I would, but
Okay, we have 1 volunteer. We need 2. Who else? I'm not attending. Is anyone else?
I need a voting delegate and up to 2 alternates if you want to appoint them.
So
I'll be an alternate.
If that's the consensus of the council to approve Councilman Cruz as the voting delegate and Vice Mayor Powers as the alternate. I think we're all set. Do we need to vote on it?
He's going to find out how many friends he has.
I already found it up in the last meeting.
Let him go into that with a good,
Oh, that's
optimistic view.
Consensus.
Yeah, okay.
And I do have a couple of reminders that I almost forgot about. The Galt City, the Galt City Council Youth Committee will hold their meeting on June 11th. It was supposed to be held on July. I'm sorry. I'm so behind.
Going backwards.
It was supposed to be held on July 4th, so of course it was canceled, moved up a week to July 11th. It will be held in the council conference room at 6 p.m. There's a strategic planning meeting at Brewster's on July 12th from 9 to 4. The Parks and Rec Commission meeting at 7 p.m. in the council chambers on July 13th. And then on July 14th, the Planning Commission meeting will meet here in the council chambers at 6:30, and that takes us to our next city council meeting on July 19th.
Comments by staff?
We just have one. I know council members will be eager to report on the Independence Day celebrations. I won't go into that, but I did want to make mention of the sponsors that we had that stepped up at the last minute. The city was kind of put in a lurch when the festival committee backed out, and we took on the role of doing a festival and a celebration this year. And so I wanted to thank Cal Waste, who was our primary sponsor this year, for stepping forward and donating $6,000 to the city to put on this event. We also received donations from SMUD as well as PG&E. I know a lot of Cal Waste partners and suppliers and so forth stepped up and provided funding for that event too. So great success. I also wanted to thank staff, Parks and Rec staff, for working very hard and putting this together at the last minute, and our council members, Vice Mayor Power and Singleton, for all the work that they put in every week, having meetings and organizing things. There was a lot of people, a lot of effort coming together at a moment's notice and making it happen. So it was really, I think, a good moment for the city.
Well, excuse me, Jason, but I gotta give most of the credit to Armando and his staff. They really did a great job.
Absolutely. And that's all I have.
Any other comments from, okay.
Got one. If you haven't already noticed, Bosso Road is closed from the interchange going east. It'll be closed for a couple of weeks. Starting tomorrow, we'll be closing direct access from southbound 99 off-ramp to C Street. The couplet between A and C will be closed for several weeks. Best information is to go to the city's webpage, and we've got up-to-date information about where you go, how to get there. Any questions, you can call Public Works. So far, we've had a very good reception from the public, had very few phone calls, but I think we're getting the message out on how to get there. It's going to be some inconvenience. It's everybody just to stay calm, and we'll try to get to there as fast as we can, but there is going to be some disruption.
Easier said than done.
Thank you. I think what's happening is pretty exciting, watching those big pillars and everything go up, so we're excited.
They're not going to use that one off-ramp going right to A that they have paved down right now?
They will eventually switch over to that one. I'm talking about the connection between A Street and C Street. You know, when they switch to that new off-ramp, you will not be able to get between A Street and C Street.
Oh.
You'll have to go down west or go back way through the shopping center to get to C Street.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments by staff? Everything okay? Then we'll go to comments by council members. Vice Mayor Powers.
Well, first of all, Jason, you got to quit stealing all my thunder. I knew if anybody that totally supports our community would step up to the plate and help us this year, it would be Cal Waste. And I really want to thank them very much. They don't want a bunch of thunder, but we really needed someone, and we're thankful that we could count on you.
Besides, I can't take the money back now.
Right. And, you know, I got to hand it to Armando and his group. I am totally amazed at how fast they could get something going. This was our first time out, and I wanted to really shout out to Armando and to Monica and to Dan, Debbie, Anthony, and Troy for the parts they did in helping, and they did mostly everything, let's face it. I am very optimistic about the way this goes, and I have to tell you that the enthusiasm I saw from everybody that worked for Parks and Rec that day was unbelievable. On the 102 heat, we still got it rocking as much as we could, and you know, the ending was great. You know, we had everybody started coming in, and they just started rolling in, and this was a great thing to work on, and I think it went great. And Armando, kudos to you. I'm amazed at what you can do.
Thank you. Anything else?
I think that was it.
Okay. Councilman Singleton?
Ditto.
Ditto? That's it?
I think
You
I've
got
said enough.
this
I've got mine through. Yeah, I've been to the.
So I guess I better
today.
thank
We're-
you for your help.
I think Jason already did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Shelton, how was your
We
fourth?
did work very well together.
Very good, thank you. I too was at the festival with the Galt boosters. I thought I was completely out, but I guess I'm still signed up for a couple more months. I think they're trying to make my wife and I lifetime members. But we enjoy it.
Good.
I'm glad everyone had a safe Fourth. I hope everyone did. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Cruz?
Just kind of reiterating Armando's excellent job out there, except when you tried to put me in front of his truck. Otherwise, I hope everybody had a great 4th of July.
You have that on tape?
I'm sure there's a story there, but we won't go into it.
No, there is. We don't have time.
Okay. Anything else?
One more thing, Armando, I have to tell you that a lot of the reports I'm getting back from people in the community is they really loved the spectacular show, the fireworks show itself, the different fireworks they used and what they normally do. It was really well done. So if you could pass that along for us to our fireworks folks, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. I want to especially thank our council members, Singleton and Vice Mayor Powers, for taking on the job. That took some courage, and they did a great job. Thank you both.
We weren't going to let anybody else do it. Jumped up there.
Well, you did a great job. Thank you. I
very
know it's
much.
a lot of work.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
And I wanted to say I had a very special 4th of July in addition to what the city did. My grandson returned from Afghanistan over the 4th of July holiday, so we're very happy over that. Hopefully he won't have to go back. So if there's no other comments, we will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming.